Good morning and welcome to the Senate Committee on Commerce and Labor, where I now have my voice back. Would the Secretary please call roll?
Senator Daley?
Here.
Senator Ellison? Present. Senator Flores? Senator Lang? Senator Rogish? Senator Scheibel? Senator Steinbeck? Chair Pazina.
Present, and please mark Senators Lang and Flores absent excused. We do have a quorum, and I'd like to welcome members of the audience here in Carson City, in Las Vegas, though I don't see anyone there, or anyone following our meeting online. Before we begin, we'll start with a few housekeeping items. First, I'd like to remind everyone to please silence all of your electronic devices while in the committee room. Members of the public may provide testimony in various ways, all of which are listed on the agenda. You may also submit public comment in writing, either in addition to testifying or in the place of. If you wish to testify in person, please sign in at the table by the door and leave a business card with the committee secretaries. When testifying in person, please turn the microphones on to speak and off to listen, as we have other people listening and viewing the meeting in Las Vegas, potentially, and online. Please also state and spell your name for the record. Anyone who'd like to receive electronic notifications of scheduled bills and access to the committee's meeting materials may do so by signing up on Nellis on the legislative website. Committee members will be using their laptops to view handouts and other exhibits. Please don't view this as a sign of disrespect or inattention. And with that, we're going to move on to our first agenda item. We're going to open the hearing on Senate Bill 11, which revises provisions relating to the payment of extended unemployment benefits. So with that, I'd like to invite Director Sewell and any co-presenters he may have up to the table.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members. For the record, Christopher Sewell. I'm the Director of the Department of Employment Training and Rehabilitation, also known as DETR. Today we're before you to present SB 11. I will be honest with you, this has to deal with a lot of math, so I am going to be tossing this over to our Chief Economist, Dave Schmidt, who will be able to walk you through what the bill does for the state of Nevada. So thank you very much, and I will turn it over to Dave.
Thank you. For the record, my name is David Schmidt. I am the Chief Economist for DETR. SB 11, as the Director said, revises some provisions relating to state extended benefits. In short, what this bill does is revises the calculation of benefits for the State Extended Benefit Program. The State Extended Benefit Program is a program which, thank you, it's the last tier of benefits that are available. It is a permanent part of state law, and so because it's a permanent part of state law, it is subject to the Federal Budget Control Act, which imposes sequestration reductions on benefits that are paid if certain conditions aren't met. Typically, in law, it's funded 50% from state funds, 50% from federal funds. In practice, when there is a recession, Congress pretty much always passes temporary legislation to cover the 50% state share of benefits to make it fully federally funded. You can go to the next slide. The challenge with this is that full funding, while it unlocks additional weeks of benefits, in state law, we have a provision that says when this full federal funding is available, an alternate trigger is adopted for the program, which extends the maximum number of weeks from 13 to 20 weeks. And so we extend the number of benefits that are available, but the sequestration reductions knock down that federal share that's in permanent law because that's an existing program. They don't affect the extra 50% that covers the state share of benefits because that share was not in law at the time that the sequestration was put into place. And so that's a temporary bill. It's not affected. This other share is affected, which means that the total benefits that we pay, roughly 3% of those, we are on the hook for when we have this full federal funding. So because we are on the hook for this extra piece of benefits, then we are on the hook to repay the federal government for the share of benefits. It's usually pretty small, but through COVID, it was a total of about $8 million because when you have a benefit program, even if it's the last tier of benefits, even if most people that start receiving unemployment don't get to this tier, it still does add up over time. And you can see on the slide here in italics the federal guidance that says how we have to repay these benefits. So this bill essentially adopts some changes. It's language that was proposed by the Department of Labor for states that would like to not be on that hook for that additional money to bring benefit calculations in line with the sequestration reduction. It's slightly complicated in the wording because if you were to just reduce the benefits by 3%, that wouldn't reduce the total obligation because it would just add additional weeks on to the end of the benefits. And so to stay in line with federal funding, you have to both shrink the weekly benefit that's available to be in line with the sequestration reduction and shrink the total benefits that are available to match that so that you still get 20 weeks at the slightly reduced benefit amount. That is, in summary, what this bill accomplishes, and we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Do we have any questions from the members? Senator Ellison?
Thank you, ma'am. When you got me confused when you said there's $8 million in debt, but then you said there's no fiscal note. So is that strictly federal money only, or has the state got a match on top of that too?
David Schmidt for the record. That $8 million comes out of the state unemployment trust fund benefits because they are still benefits that are paid to individuals. And so it is not a fiscal budgeted process. It's not like federal administration funds or general funds or anything like that. It comes out of the benefits, the benefit trust fund that we use to pay regular state unemployment benefits.
Okay, thank you.
Vice Chair Daley?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'm hoping to understand all of that stuff you just said a little bit better. So tell me if I'm wrong. So the first 13 weeks of unemployment is paid for from contributions from the employer paid by the state at whatever amount they qualify based on how you do the calculation.
David Schmidt again for the record. So in the course of a full claim, when someone first starts filing with us, up to the first 26 weeks is just the regular state unemployment benefits program that's always available. The state extended benefits program, when someone's in this tier of benefits, it's not week 1 here, week 2 here. For that entire tier of benefits, it's under this program, which is, you know, if someone received 1 week under the state extended benefit program and was paid $500, in normal law, that $500 would be 50% paid by the state trust fund and then 50% reimbursed by the federal government. Due to sequestration, the $250 that the federal government would pay would be reduced by about 5%, which I should have picked a number that made it easy to do that math, but I didn't, $50 or so. And so they would reduce the payment that they make accordingly. So instead of being $250, it ends up in practice being, you know, $350, $200, something in that ballpark. But it's only for that last tier of benefits. In a recession, typically there's additional programs like the PEUC or EUC 08 or additional fully federally funded weeks of benefits. In the Great Recession, it was up to about 53 weeks. For COVID, it changed over time, but it also ended up being a pretty substantial number of weeks. And so they go from regular UI program to these EUC recession-specific temporary programs that Congress creates. And then when they run out of that, you get to the state extended benefit program, which is 13 weeks. Typically in a recession, there's an alternative that will push that up to a maximum of 20 weeks. But it's that last tier of benefits. And so it's sometimes after a year and a half of unemployment, this program will kick in and be the last bit of benefits. And then that will be usually in a recession, in all previous recessions, almost fully federally funded, 97% goes to the feds, but the state trust fund would kick in that extra 3% because there is that sequestration reduction currently in place.
Okay, so I think I got it. So the 26 weeks, which is the normal amount that I'm familiar with, paid for by the state. And then, correct? Okay.
Yep.
Yes, okay. And then the extended benefit goes for 13 weeks, could go out to 20 unless you have COVID or some of that other stuff. But that's normal, 13 more and then 20. So how is that currently paid for? I know you said it's 50% the state, 50% the Fed. So who's paying it first and reimbursing who, et cetera? And if the federal government is reimbursing us, we'll answer that on how does that last 500 get paid? Does the state pay it and then get reimbursed, or do the feds pay it and the state reimburses?
Thank you, Senator David Schmidt, again for the record. So in normal times, like right now, the state extended benefit program is not active because this program only turns on when certain thresholds are met. There's two potential thresholds that exist in state law, and all of these are unaffected by the bill, but just sort of for the context of how it works. Right now, if our level of weekly unemployment claims shot up pretty high. We have an insured unemployment rate, which is the ratio of claims to total employment of about 1%. So that's paying about 20,000 people per week right now, regular unemployment. If that shot up to 6.5%, so about 6.5 times the level we're at right now, or about 130,000 claims a week, if I did my math right, then the state extended benefit, this SEB program would trigger on, and those additional weeks of benefits would become available. When there is full federal funding available in a recession, we do have a provision in state law where the governor can say full federal funding is available. We're going to adopt an alternate trigger, which is a provision in state and federal law that says if you base your trigger to turn this benefit program on your unemployment rate instead of on the ratio of claims to employment, which is a much easier threshold to meet, and your unemployment rate is above about 8%, then the 13 weeks can become 20 weeks. And so there's an alternate trigger in place that can turn on these extra benefits. In existing law, the benefit amount is based on the same benefits you receive in your regular unemployment claim. And that's when this comes on. The cash flow through the system, benefits get paid out basically right away to people. They're not waiting for a reimbursement to come into the feds before they get money.
From the state.
And so it's kind of that flow through the trust fund, and then the charging goes out in the back end for the accounting to hit the appropriate sources of money, be that the unemployment trust fund benefit account or the federal accounts to pay various forms of federal benefits.
So the state pays it?
Yes.
Okay, and then the state gets reimbursed from the federal government. And let's just, for now, this part of the question, it's full federal funding. So the feds are going to reimburse all of it or half of it, or?
So the feds would...
On just normal 13 weeks. I understand the other parts about the other triggers and that, so.
David Schmidt again for the record. So if we're hypothetically paying out these additional benefits, we're in the SEB program, someone claims a week, that check goes out, money is basically will flow through the trust and the benefit payment account and then be reimbursed by the feds. We would charge the federal EB account, if you will, for that money, but they would say, but we're only paying you 97% of the total, not 100% because of sequestration. They will put out guidance every year that says the sequestration amount that has to be applied to payment for these SEB benefits is, and it gets a little bit trickier because they will say it's 5.8, 5.9% typically, but it's 5% of the 50% share
Trying
for
to
the
get-
permanent
I'm
reimbursement.
trying to
there.
get to how we end up owing the federal government. So that, and I haven't got that yet because we got to the 13th week, all the things are triggered. The state paid it through the trust fund, through that cash flow, excuse me. And then we sent a bill to the feds and there's no sequestration. How much do they pay us back? Half or all? Pretty easy question, I think.
David Schmidt again for the record. So the
No sequestration.
no sequestration, if that wasn't a part of law, we pay $400 and then, so essentially the money is out the door first and then we would charge them 50%, we would get 50%. I think where it can show up on the back end is just in the accounting for this because the normal distribution of the money would go 50-50, but then applying that sequestration, if we have charged them 50 and they're only paying 48, then they'll say, we need that 2% back. The accounting for the trust fund can sometimes be a couple of steps down the line to reconcile everything for the billing of those benefit programs. And I think that's where that extra $8 million, because COVID was very large, added up over time as the normal accounting for SEB said hit the pot that pays for these extended benefits. But that pot was, we said, here's the 100% of the charges. They say, oh, but we're only actually paying this 98% and we have to get reimbursed for this other piece.
So if there's no sequestration, they pay 100%. If it's $500, we pay $250, they pay $250, reimburse. There's no obligation to pay them back.
Yeah,
If
if
there-
there were no sequestration,
Yeah,
it would be
okay.
clean and done.
If there is sequestration, then we would pay the $250. We would bill them. Are they then paying the whole $250 or are they reducing part of it? I'm just trying to get how is it that we end up owing them money? So they're giving us money that then we have to pay back, or?
David Schmidt, effectively, yes.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
All right, and that's where I was not following on your whole thing. So they pay us, and then we have to pay them back, whatever the difference is after they tell us, well, there is sequestration. So if they know there's sequestration, why do they not just pay us the reduced amount instead of creating all this additional? I don't know. It's the government. So.
David Schmidt for the record. Effectively, yes. Because we're not sending in like an invoice to them for that $250. The way that the unemployment system is set up, essentially they have a big pot, and we say we're charging $250 to the pot, and the money flows into the trust fund. But the reconciliation on the back end is where they will say, well, you said $250, but it should have been $240, and so please give us this $10 back.
Okay, so that's where I was trying to get to figured out. So you send them the bill, they pay it, and then they say, oh, we had sequestration. It was only supposed to be this. We overpaid. Send it back to us. And that's where you ended up owing that stuff. How many times do they every year do it? Every 2 years? Do they do the sequestration every time, or is it only some years?
David Schmidt for the record. Sequestration is basically always there. It goes back to a Budget Control Act, I think, from the 1980s.
85.
And so it is basically always in place. The necessary reductions in federal spending are effectively never met, and so it would be safe to assume in any future recession, whenever the EB program is active, the sequestration reduction will be in place, and it's just a question of how many benefits are paid under that program to see what the potential size of that obligation would be.
Yeah. So my final comment, question / you can confirm or not. So what this bill will do would allow the state to anticipate the sequestration, reduce the benefit on what you think it's going to be. You still may have the part where you're sending the bill to the feds, they're paying you too much, and then they're saying, hey, it should have been this. But you've already reduced the benefit out of the state portion, so you have the money to pay them back. Is that what this ends up doing?
David Schmidt for the record. So yes, that's a fair summary.
Ma'am, For the record, Chris Sewell, Director. I think the easiest way to explain this is we want to be able to pay as you go, so to speak, instead of delaying that payment and getting a big bill at the very end. That's probably the easiest way to explain this, and I'm sure Dave will correct me if I'm wrong, but we want to start being able to pay as you go on the sequestration part of the benefits instead of waiting for that big $8 million bill or whatever the sequestration bill is every year.
David Schmidt for the record, and the reason for that is that the benefit amount that we have to pay is currently fixed by state law. It says you have to pay the weekly benefit amount that was in place, so we have no provision currently to reduce it to match the sequestration reduction that we know will be there. And so because we have to pay the $500, we then obligate ourselves at the time of paying those benefits to make up the difference for that sequestration amount.
Okay, thank you so much. I think the word of the day is sequestration. We have one more question from Senator Scheibel.
Sorry about that. I just want to make sure I'm 100% clear, because I think you did say this, but before I start making decisions on bad information, I want to make sure I understand. So if I had received unemployment benefits in 2024 and there had been some sequestration and I was receiving a month, would it be a monthly or bi-weekly check?
David Schmidt for the record, weekly.
Okay, a weekly check for $300. I was getting $300 every single week. At some point, sequestration was implemented to control federal spending, and I kept getting my $300 weekly check. I wouldn't know, as the Nevadan on unemployment, who was paying who, that the state was paying $150 and getting reimbursed $150 from the federal government. That was handled kind of on the back end, if you will.
Yes.
Okay, and so now what you're saying is that if we pass this bill, which becomes effective upon passage and approval, then next week, if there is sequestration in effect and the federal government has reduced its payment by $25, my check will now go down to $275.
David Schmidt for the record, if the EB program were active, it would work that way. However, we don't currently qualify because this program only turns on when we have particularly high levels of unemployment, which we don't have right now.
Okay, and when's the last time that we had those kinds of levels of unemployment?
That would have been in COVID during from about May of 2020 to, because of various triggers, September of 2021.
Okay, and before COVID, how many times approximately were we eligible for this program?
Typically in any recession, David Schmidt again for the record, so before COVID it would have been the Great Recession from about 2008 through about 2010, I want to say. Prior to that, it would have been 2001 recession. Prior to that, the 1991 recession.
Okay, so you would anticipate that this would save the state of Nevada money?
Yes.
And do we have a figure on how much we anticipate we would save?
David Schmidt for the record, we don't have a specific estimate. It would depend on the level of benefits being paid out. Typically, this program is pretty small. The $8 million in COVID would be at the pretty extreme high end. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but I would guess it would be 1 to 2 million if we looked at the Great Recession, because this program is the last tier of benefits. A lot of people have gotten a job or done something else. There's also some additional features of filing for extended benefits that are more onerous because it's a old program that's existed since the 1970s. Back in the Great Recession, there was a requirement that people send in their claims on paper, and there were boxes and boxes of the individual paper claims to take this program. And so those have been cleaned up. I don't think that's the case currently, but not a lot of people claim this program. In COVID, it was only at the very, very end, after about 70 or 80 weeks of other types of benefits, that this would potentially kick in for people.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay. Seeing no further questions, we'll have you step back from the table and ask that anyone who would like to testify in support of Senate Bill 11 in Carson City step up to the table.
Good morning, Chair, members of the committee. Paul Morak with the Vegas Chamber. The Chamber is in support of SB 11. We would like to thank the Director and his team for meeting with our organization a few weeks ago about the bill. As you know, the employers of the state pay into this fund for the benefit of employees, of course, when they unfortunately have to collect unemployment. The Chamber does support the proposal brought forth because it does add further stabilization of the fund, which benefits both employers and employees. It also ensures that there's less pressure on the fund in terms of the annual rate of increases, which are held every December through the Employment Security Division. So we do believe this is a good policy from the fiscal matter, but also for the employee and employers. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Chair Pizzina. Is that working? Thank you, Chair Pizzina and committee members. Misty Grimmer on behalf of the Nevada Resort Association. We also are in support of this bill and grateful for all the work that Dieter does during the interim, finding ways to make the system more efficient and modernized. Thank you very much.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Andrew McCam, the Executive Director of the Nevada Franchise Auto Dealers Association. I think my two colleagues summarized everything well. I'd be remiss if I did not thank Dieter. They actually reached out to me on this and asked for our opinion and input on it, and I think that's very great when agencies and departments reach out to the various business sectors to get input and to see if there are any input or if there are any problems. Quite honestly, it's quite above my head, to be totally honest, and I think, Senator Daley, you really, in your line of questionings, really hit at the point of what this bill will do, and it's just going to make the process smoother and better. So thank you for your time, ma'am.
All right. Thank you so much. Do we have anyone in Las Vegas who'd like to testify in support of Senate Bill 11? Seeing no one in all of the Vegas hearing room, we're going to move to the phones. Broadcast, is there anyone on the phones who'd like to testify in support of Senate Bill 11?
Thank you, Chair. Your public line is open and working, but you have no callers at this time.
All right, we'll close support of Senate Bill 11 and move into opposition. Is there anyone in Carson City who'd like to testify in opposition of Senate Bill 11? In Las Vegas? And broadcast back to you on the phones.
You have no callers at this time.
All right, that'll move opposition. Do we have anyone who'd like to testify in neutral to Senate Bill 11? In Carson City? In Las Vegas? And broadcast back to you.
You have no callers at this time.
All right, that will close out neutral. Director, would you like to say any final words?
For the record, Chris Sewell, Director of Dieter. Madam Chair, members, thank you very much for allowing us to present SB 11 to you. As I stated in the very beginning, a lot of math and a lot of behind-the-scenes calculations, but it will actually end up helping Nevada in the long run to help, making sure with sequestration it is all get stabilized and we start paying as you go instead of waiting to the very end and having a big bill. Thank you very much.
I do have one last question, just out of curiosity while you're here. How many Nevadans would you say percentage-wise fall into that final tier of benefits?
For the record, Chris Sewell, I'm going to phone a friend, my chief economist, Dave Schmidt, who can pull numbers out of his head like no one I've ever known.
David Schmidt again for the record. I don't have the precise number, but I think roughly speaking, you'd be looking at about 20,000 individuals, probably high end. So if you're comparing that to the total population of people who received unemployment benefits during COVID, maybe about 10%, compared to the total workforce, maybe about 2%.
Thank you so much. And with that, we will close the hearing on Senate Bill 11, and we'll move on to our next agenda item, which is public comments. Members of the public may provide public comment in person, by phone, or submit written public comment to the committee's email address. Instructions for providing public comment may be found on the agenda, including the call-in information. We look forward to hearing your comments. Please do keep them brief and avoid repetition made by previous speakers. Finally, clearly state and spell your name for the record. We'll begin with public comment from those in the physical locations. Do we have anyone here in Carson City? Las Vegas? Anyone on the phones broadcast who'd like to make public comment?
Chair, your public line is open and working, but you have no callers at this time.
And we have yet to have one public comment, and Commerce and Labor, our record maintains. With that, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.